Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Science Dispatch podcast. My name is Cameron English. That's Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein, Director of Medicine at the American Council on Science and Health. Chuck, what's going on?
Nothing. It's a beautiful day. Beautiful day.
I love beautiful days. We have a interesting article here from you. I dare say that it borders on asking questions you're not allowed to ask, Dr. Dinnerstein. I've been credibly informed by Big Science that
I can't believe it. This was an English literature experiment.
This is really good. The article, tersely enough, is called "The Climate Crisis Within." Here's your summary, and then break down the details. So you write, Western modernization has triggered a, quote, internal climate crisis in the human gut, an ecological upheaval marked by biodiversity loss, disrupted food webs, and chronic inflammatory weather. Driven by antibiotics, sanitation, diet, and lifestyle, reversing course requires ecosystem-level restoration rather than reductionist fixes. Sir, you are on thin scientific ice.
I'm on beautiful metaphorical ice.
Science-based medicine is going to write a rambling blog post attacking you as a physician shill. You better be very careful.
If only I could be a physician shill like Dr. Mercola. But no. Once again, ethics have gotten in the way. So here's the thing. I thought I'd have a writer's moment and just do kind of a thought experiment and build on an extended metaphor. And I put two pieces together. One is the Gaia, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, hypothesis, that there is a great Mother Earth and that we are a integrated system within that. And something that perhaps you remember from your youth, the Tamagotchis, those little, Japanese devices where you were responsible for a life and had to be
90s flashback. Little handheld Game Boy looking thing. I clearly remember the creature could defecate on the screen, and that was an indication that you were feeding it correctly.
Oh, good to know. But you had to keep it alive. And so I wanted to kind of combine those two, and it brought me to what I think is a certain scientific truth, that we do contain multitudes, and many of the multitudes within us, specifically the microbiome, interact with us and can influence our mood and behavior because they are the intermediary that is taking a lot of our food and turning it into chemical products that our body makes use of. So the medical or the scientific term for that is a holobiont, which is basically two species living within one another in synchrony. We know that this exists because there's a long-standing theory that our mitochondria originally were external bacteria that have evolved themselves to live within us. So I thought I would see if I could build upon that metaphor and see where it took me. And that took me next to the concept of the hygiene hypothesis, which suggests that despite the fact that sanitation and antimicrobials have made a significant difference in our lifespan, we may have taken it too far, and that the increasing hygienic nature of our environment has led to a series of problems, including autoimmune diseases. Peanut allergies would be another example of a problem that has developed because we have less exposure to a toxin. And again, relating it back to the microbiome, if we think of our microbiome as contained within us and that we are in fact responsible for that population, then certain behaviors on our part, especially the indiscriminate use of antibiotics, may wreak havoc with those microbial worlds. Another place that wreaks havoc with that microbial world are the foods we eat in a world where we have now a wide range of industrial foods which have decreased the diversity of what we're eating. Those foods very well may have shaped some of the qualities of their microbiome, and I think are responsible in some senses for the rise of the Western diseases of obesity and diabetes and some of the metabolic disorders that we associate with the Western diet. That led me to giving some thought to how we restore ecosystems, and one of the major ways that we talk about restoring ecosystems today is to let them be fallow and recover on their own. And in other cases, we go in and try and foster their return to their prior state. We rewild them. And as it turns out, there is a good example of that in medicine. C. difficile infections, Clostridium difficile infections, are a significant problem in the hospital for people that have been on antibiotics, broad-spectrum antibiotics, for a long period of time. It causes massive, uncontrolled diarrhea. It can make them septic. It takes a lot of lives over the course of the year. And it's because of an overgrowth of C. difficile in the microbiome, because all the other bacteria have been taken out by the broad-spectrum antibiotics. They've tried a number of treatments for it. Vancomycin is the classic antibiotic that's used to kill the C. difficile, though C. difficile, because it doesn't want to die, has developed resistance to vancomycin. But what's turned out to be the most successful means of cutting down on those infections is to transplant feces from a healthy person into a sick individual. The proverbial eating of a shit sandwich, as it were, though we use other means to carry that out. And as it turns out, fecal transplant in this setting is perhaps the most effective way to rewild the microbiome. So my basic point at the end of all of this was that there are multitudes living within us. Those creatures that live within us are in part responsible for our health, and that we should be better stewards of them. And we're better stewards of them by the means of our lifestyle, what we eat, how we exercise, and the things we inhale and exhale.
It seems to me, this is just anecdotal, so I'm curious to get your thoughts, that medicine is getting better at recognizing the overuse or misuse of antibiotics. So, for example, last year, I had a really bad bacterial infection, the details of which are not pertinent. But before treating it, the doctor whom I saw said, we need to do a gram stain. So we need to figure out exactly what this infection is and how best to treat it with an antibiotic. So he didn't just go, yep, bacterial infection, here's some pills. He said, let's find out exactly what this is. Let's find out exactly which antibiotic is going to be most effective and for how long. So if that's happening to me, presumably there's been some new standards, new strict restrictions put in place that many doctors are applying. I would guess that's the case. Is that something you think is true?
I think that physicians are more cognizant of being better antibiotic stewards than they were in the past. You know, it's taken a long time to go from the fact that penicillin was a wonder drug to maybe we're using a little too much penicillin. But I think that message has been driven home, and that in a lot of cases, there is that thought. I mean, I still talk to people that are being prescribed antibiotics by telehealth or being prescribed antibiotics without a culture. And I think that's probably no longer the standard of care. And I think over the next few years, we'll see continued improvements in there. Unfortunately, a lot of the antibiotic misuse is not on the human side anymore, but it's on the veterinary and farm side of the equation.
I would be curious to see what you think where you think that's occurring. I think there's been a similar restriction where you have the FDA saying, you need to treat this, you need to use these to treat sick animals, you can use these drugs, not these ones. You can't use them for growth promotion, et cetera, et cetera. So there's been a lot of changes there too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know we're generally anti-regulatory, and I don't know how you enforce it, but I think that there's something to be said for saying getting a throat culture when you get the antibiotics as a routine part of things. For as vaunted as the electronic health record is. It's certainly possible to set it up that if you're prescribing an antibiotic, the system will query you and say, what's the presumptive infection? Do you want to get a culture? Simply that do you want to get a culture is going to be a tag to get more physicians to do what really seems to be a better approach. Now that may not, get rid of a lot of overuse, because in many cases we pull our prescribing gun before we pull our lab gun, and so you're 3 days into antibiotics before we get a negative culture that you didn't need them.
Very good. So on the consumer side, on the public side, what are some practical pieces of advice we could follow? Let your kids play in the dirt every once in a while. It's okay.
Oh yeah, dirt's good. We like dirt. Dirt is a good thing. You need to, get outside and interact with germs. Germs germs are not necessarily our enemy. That's the germ theory of disease said that, germs are bad, but some germs are not. And in fact, there's a lot of germs that live inside us that make us what we are.
It seems to me, at the time at least, once you start discovering that there are bacteria that are wreaking havoc, causing serious infections and killing people, you could look at that limited information and go, oh, these little invisible critters, these things are gnarly. But it was going to be many decades, maybe even longer, before we went, oh, wait a minute, but there's actually some, in the right context, good ones living within us. And so it's a balancing act. Everything in medicine seems to be interconnected, and it's a trade-off. That's the best lesson I've taken from these conversations with you, is that
I see this as each of the thousands of reactions in balance with one another, and so you can poke on some, and they're very resilient networks around them, and they adjust to it. And other times, the network is not as resilient, and you start seeing cascading failures from that. And it's taken us a long time to move away from the old version of the germ theory that germs were all bad, to begin to recognize some of the beneficial qualities of them. And the same holds true, I think, for talking about something as simple as sanitation and dirt. And sanitation is probably the one public health measure that has led to more extended human life than anything else we have thought to do. But spraying disinfectants and antimicrobials on every surface is taking sanitation a bit too far. And it means that we're not exposed in small amounts to things that will be dangerous to us in large amounts.
So I think what you're saying as we wrap up here is that two things can be true at once. That is, measles vaccines can be good, and you can also play in the dirt every once in a while. Right? It's good to have a clean hospital room.
You had me nervous there. But yes, you can hold two contrary ideas in your head at once.
What'd you think I was going to say?
I didn't want to even know.
Yeah, you don't have to partition your thinking in that way, right? Yes, we need to disinfect hospital rooms because people can get very sick because they're already sick. But also, let your kids go out and play and touch the grass. It's okay. They're not going to die. Okay. Well, we're going to leave the mystery of what Chuck thought I was going to say to the ether, and you guys can just come up with your own conclusions.
You can put it in the comments. There
you go. Okay, once again, the article's called The Climate Crisis Within. This is by our own Dr. Chuck Dinnerstein. It's at acsh.org. While you're there, click on the subscribe tab, give us your email address. The articles you read are the ones that we talk about here typically. We are on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook and YouTube. ACSH Matter of Facts, hosted by our colleague Anna Dolaski. Great 1-minute videos and infographics breaking down the day's most interesting science topics. Go check out her work. Thank you as always for joining us. We'll see you next time.